Hello everyone, and welcome to part 1 of the Bootstrap section of the course. A key feature of Bootstrap are its default classes. You can call these classes to quickly and easily build good-looking features for your web application. We're going to be going over button classes as well as the container and Jumbotron classes. First though, we need to start off by showing how to connect an HTML file to Bootstrap itself. Let's get started. I'm going to open up my text editor to an HTML file as well as my browser and check out getbootstrap.com again. Let's get started. Alright, so here I have my editor open, as well as my browser. I have an empty HTML file that's linked to my browser. Let's get started by showing you how to actually connect an HTML content to Bootstrap. So I just typed HTML, got the basics going. And if you go to getbootstrap.com and click on Download Bootstrap, it'll eventually take you to this Getting Started tab. And you basically have two options here. One is to download the Bootstrap files yourself, and then link them locally on your computer. So you'll be downloading a CSS file, and then you can link that locally, just as we've done for other CSS files. Or you can just use the CDN, which basically is an online host for you to connect to. So you can just grab this link right here, and you can grab all of these if you want, but we're keeping it simple, so we'll just grab this right now, which is the only link we need for this particular lecture. And if you scroll down, you'll actually see there is pre-compiled Bootstrap, Bootstrap source code, but keep scrolling down, there's a basic template. So usually we'll probably end up starting with this entire basic template, which includes things such as jQuery and some JavaScript code, but right now we don't know enough about that to actually use it, so we're just going to use the very first link we saw here, which is the latest compiled and minified CSS. So if we zoom in just a little more, this is the link I'm using. Alright, so now that that's ready to go, let's actually test it out by creating a heading 1 in the body. So we'll say Bootstrap exclamation mark, and let's actually comment out with Control or Command / the link to that style sheet just to make sure it's working. So if I refresh this project.html, it's linked to it, I see Bootstrap. Now if I turn the link back on and uncomment it and refresh, notice what happens to the font. The font changes to Bootstrap's default font. And that is one quick and easy way you can tell if Bootstrap is successfully working. Keep in mind you do need an internet connection for this to work. If not, you'll have to download the files manually. Either way, you're going to need the internet connection at some point in time. But if you're watching this video, it's probably because you have an internet connection. Let's discuss a container class. So I'm going to create a div tag. And right now I'll leave it classless, but I'm going to add heading 1 that says hello world, exclamation mark, save it, refresh, and I can see that my hello world heading is actually right against the left hand side of my browser. So as I expand my browser, it's still there on the left hand side. What I can do to try to center it a little bit off that left hand browser is put it in what's known as a container class. And what's really nice about Bootstrap, it basically comes with a bunch of predefined classes for you to easily call in your code. And you don't have to worry about memorizing all of these class names that we're going to be seeing. The main thing you have to learn out of this section of the course is how to reference the documentation, which we'll be showing you when we talk about buttons. But notice that hello world is now in the class container, so if I refresh this, I see that it's centered and down a little bit. So basically it just affected the margin spacing. And you can see here as I expand this window, or as I begin to collapse it more, it tries its best to say a little more centered or a certain distance off of the left-hand side of the browser, which is exactly what we want. So let's delete this now and continue on. Okay, now that we've explored the container class a little bit, it's going to be something we explore a lot more as we continue through Bootstrap. It's time to talk about the button classes that are available to you in Bootstrap. If you come to the link getbootstrap.com/CSS, which if I expand this browser, you'll see it here, it's in the top nav bar. You can just click on CSS. There is a right-hand side column here with some sections, and click on buttons. And basically Bootstrap comes with some button classes that you can easily call, and you can call them on 3 separate types of tags. You can call it on an anchor tag, remember that's a tag with a link to it. You can call it on a button tag, something we haven't actually talked about yet, but we're going to be doing in this section right now, and an input tag, something we've used for forms. But we'll actually be discussing forms in the next lecture. So right now let's explore using the button tag, which we haven't actually seen yet in action. Now the button tag basically allows us to create a button. Let me scroll back down to where we had the buttons. Okay, I just scrolled back down to the buttons, and let's add a button in to our HTML code. So I will say button, and we'll keep the type button and name button to be the default there. And let's say something like click on that button. We'll refresh, and now you can see we have a button here that I can click, but really nothing happens. And the reason we really didn't talk about button tags in the HTML section of the course or the CSS section of the course is because before we know JavaScript, there's not much we can actually do with these buttons themselves. Right now we're learning about them because of the typical styling choices you use with Bootstrap on them, but keep in mind we won't actually be able to really activate anything upon the click of a button besides a simple connection to another website. But we can do that also with an anchor tag. It's not until we reach JavaScript where we're actually going to be clicking buttons and making things change on the web page. Alright, so here's my button tag. Now let's discuss Bootstrap classes with buttons. And this is basically the way you're going to be using the Bootstrap documentation. I keep stressing that documentation is really important with Bootstrap, and I'm going to show you why. So we keep scrolling down on buttons, and you see here we have options. So these are available buttons that quickly create a styled button. And there's basically just a couple default button types. There's default, primary, success, info, warning, danger. And the way you utilize these classes with Bootstrap and the way you utilize Bootstrap in general is just by specifying class is equal to, and then you specify whatever class you want. So let's say if we come back here to our project HTML, we want to turn this click button into the style of a success button. So we just come here, look at success, and see it's btn space btn dash success. So there's button or btn dash success, save it, come back here, refresh, and now it looks like a success button. Great. So coming down, we can keep seeing that there's more stuff we can add. So fancy, larger, smaller buttons, you can continue to add for more classes. So now I can add btn-lg. So let's do that. I'll say btn-lg to make that into a large button. So if I come back here, refresh, we can see that the button's gotten a little bit larger. We can continue down, see things such as active state. So buttons will appear pressed when active. We can also do things such as make it a disabled state. So if I want to make it look disabled, all I have to do is say disabled is equal to disabled. So let's copy and paste that. And that's actually another parameter or property of this button tag. But let's save it. And let's actually create another button so we can compare it to. So I will create one button, just copy and paste this, that has disabled on. And let's say this is I am on. And the bottom one will say disabled. And the one that has I am on, we are going to delete this disabled marker on it, or disabled parameter. We'll save it, refresh here, and we can see the I am on. I can click on that, and if I hover over disabled, Google Chrome doesn't let me click on it. It shows that nice little icon that says this is not clickable. And as a quick note, you can always override these default styles. So maybe you like the success button, but you want to make the text a different color. All you have to do is in your CSS file, grab the btn-success, call it your own class in your CSS file, and you could overwrite individual aspects of it. It won't overwrite everything, it'll just overwrite whatever aspects that you want to overwrite. So if you wanted to overwrite the text color or text background, you could do that yourself, just with your CSS, and just calling this class. So success, you could do that yourself. All right. Now let's finally talk quickly about the Jumbotron, which is something we'll be using a little bit throughout this course. So to view what the Jumbotron actually looks like, we're going to hop back over to the Get Bootstrap page. And let me expand this so we can see the nav bar. And I'm going to click on Components. And Components, as we scroll down, we'll see a bunch of components that we're going to talk about later on, such as nav bars, labels, stuff like that. But you keep scrolling down, you'll see the Jumbotron component. And we see that Jumbotron is basically a lightweight, flexible component that can extend the entire viewport to showcase key content. So you can think of this almost like a landing page. And this is the most basic Jumbotron. It has some large font here, some large heading, some simple hero unit, whatever, and then a button there. So we can actually just copy and paste this and put it into our HTML. So we say hello world, ... is the paragraph. So we'll say something like, this is the paragraph. Save that, and let's actually see this now on our project page. Refresh, and we see here now we have an HTML Jumbotron. Usually, however, you're going to want this Jumbotron to be within a container so it doesn't take up this entire page. What we will do then is put this inside of a container class. Grab this entire Jumbo division or divider there, stick it inside, save it, and now when I refresh, I can see that it's basically centered like it was here on this page. And that's really the main idea of Bootstrap. You're going to come over here, see what you need. So if you want to know how to use an alert, you just come here to the alert and you can read the examples here. And you see here there's a class alert, role alert, etc. So far what we learned about were the basic button classes, which you can always check out by coming to the CSS page and then clicking on buttons, and you can see the various button tags that are available to you. Then we also learned about the container class, which you can think of it as just basically centering stuff on your page. And then we also learned about the Jumbotron class. All right, thanks everyone, and I will see you at the next lecture.